Ladies and gentlemen, Jose Antonio Vargas. And before I engage this extraordinary filmmaker, the executive producer of the clip and film we just watched, this is your second opportunity to join the conversation. You can tweet, and we will pull a few questions and comments for Jose toward the end of my conversation with him. Jose Antonio Vargas is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. He is a filmmaker. He is an immigration rights activist and the founder of Define American. So, Jose, why are you calling out white folks?
So I should say, by the way, I'm an undocumented immigrant.
For those who may not know that part of the story.
Well, I'm just saying this because, the beauty of America, that an undocumented immigrant can come and speak at the Apollo Theater is like so beyond my imagination. So
I love the way he says Apollo.
Yes.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And I apologize for my eyebrows. Somebody actually made a Tumblr thing on it because of all the eyebrow stuff that's happening on the film when I'm calling white people out, as you said. Eyebrow and facial expressions
are beautiful.
Well, so let me say this. So when I outed myself as undocumented, almost 5 years ago in the New York Times, I expected the government to come after me, but they did not. I do not know why. Ask them yourself. And we founded an organization called DefineAmerican.com. I'm sure you'll check it out. On Thursday, we are going to Des Moines and hosting a 3-day free Define American Film Festival. Yes, for free. So if you have friends in Des Moines, Iowa, please tell them that we're coming.
Way to hide.
Yes. And the goal is, so the moment I outed myself as undocumented, we've been traveling nonstop with Define American, and people of color and immigrants always get asked where we're from, right? Where are you from, right? I'm really confusing to people because my name's Latino, I look like this, it's called colonialism, the Philippines, all that. So people get really confused, right? And I was at the University of Georgia in Athens. I was invited by a college Republican group. And I'm so happy that Taylor Branch said this. It is so important that we make ourselves uncomfortable. It is so important that we go to places. Look, as a gay, undocumented Filipino who majored in Black Studies guy, I'm uncomfortable all the time. So I go to this place, and so this young man was asking me these questions about why are you here illegally, what's the DREAM Act, all that stuff. So finally, I turned the tables around because I am a journalist, and I asked him, where are you from? And he said, well, I'm American. Okay, I know, but where are you from? I'm white. Well, white is not a country, right? Like, when did the Irish and the Italians and the Germans and the Jews, when did people become white? Are Jewish people white? I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, so much of our conversation about race in this country, look, I grew up in the Philippines. Every Filipino knows every Whitney Houston song because we learned to speak English because of Whitney Houston songs. I didn't know that Whitney Houston was Black until I got here, right? And so immediately, I was very confused about, well, wait a second. So if she's Black, then they're white. So if you're Latino or you're Asian or you're, where do you fit in this dynamic? Right now in America, according to Pew, 55% of the total population growth in America in the past 50 years have come from Latinos and Asians. In the next 50 years, 88% of the total growth is going to come from Latinos and Asians. So where do we fit in that dynamic?
Okay, but you now have caused me to jump all the way to question 5.
I'm sorry. It's a lot to unpack.
No,
White people is a lot.
It's great, though. It's great because it actually comes from one of the questions that was submitted by our audience when they RSVP'd. They could submit questions. Yeah. And it points out, it's somebody who obviously saw the film White People, which is worth seeing in its entirety. It's free. And really, really challenging, as you say, challenges your ideas, whatever your ethnic or racial background. The person says, white people do not think of themselves as a race and often feel defensive when they are racialized. Should we be moving away from notions of race as a construct Or should we be asking white people to accept notions of whiteness as part of their responsibility in our society?
Since we are in Harlem,
I don't know that this person.
no,
was
I'm
an
just saying. I mean, we can't talk about Martin Luther King and not talk about James Baldwin, right? And this idea that we cannot change something we cannot face. And I would argue, as somebody who has been, most everything I've learned about this country, I learned from Baldwin and Toni Morrison, and kind of like, but this is where the school system is so important, right? This whole idea of whiteness as a construct is completely a new idea, not only to white people of a certain age, whatever that age may be, but to young white Americans. 3/4 of young white Americans, according to a poll that MTV did, MTV produced the film What Define American, 3/4 of them said that being colorblind is the ideal, to not want to see race. And what gets really dangerous is now they're using Martin Luther King's legacy, right, in my opinion, somewhat defaming it and defacing it, to fit this idea of, well, why can't people just get over it, right? And so that's why this idea of challenging not only institutional racism, that's why, I don't know if you noticed, by the way, this film was really, thank God I'm so used to being criticized by my grandmother, so I can handle anything. So when this film came out, I was criticized by a lot of white progressive writers, journalists, who felt that I was not too hard on white people.
That you were too hard or not hard enough?
Not hard enough. Like when I said, I understand how you feel, they thought I should be beating her with the bush and saying, I don't understand. I don't know about you. At Define American, we've done more than 470 events in 45 states in the past 4.5 years. This, for a lot of people, is a lot, right? And this idea, now that white Americans are actually an emerging racial minority in the United States. In 2014, 2015, I live in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, 72% of all women are women of color. 72%, right? I'm sorry, the same Los Angeles that's home to Hollywood that just had an Oscar so white, right? So, and let's Jami, and let's call people out about this. All the media institutions here in the East Coast, I don't want to name specific names because I've written for some of them, right? They write about us, but they don't necessarily want to hire us. Because the danger now becomes, why is it that only white journalists can write about people of color, and people of color can't write about ourselves because it's not objective enough, or that we have an agenda? That shit, sorry. I'm so sorry. So sorry. I'm so sorry.
Can we bleep that?
Please don't deport me. It must change. It must change.
On the words, it must change. Thank you, Jose Antonio Vargas.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Sorry,